Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Teens No Cap. This isn't a podcast focused entirely on teens and how to support them, how to parent them, how to work with them, etc. I'm your host, Charity Chafee. I'm a teen specialist. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I literally love what I get to do when working with teens. I feel like they're my people and I get them, and so I want to help other people understand teens. So that's where this podcast came from. If you are like me and you enjoy working with teens, whether you're a provider, a parent, whoever, like, follow, subscribe, send my stuff to people. I really want to help support people in understanding teens and how to get them and how to manage it all. So today we are on another episode of Chaos and Coffee, where we're going to answer some Reddit threads that my lovely VA sent over because I told her to look for some, so I would be entirely surprised. So I'm going to just go through the list of all of them. I may not get through all 10 of them, but I'm going to do my best for what we have in an hour. So here we go. The first one, my daughter has no friends. I have a 14-year-old daughter, freshman in high school, who has no friends. She's the type of kid where everyone knows her and she knows everyone, but she doesn't have any solid friendships with anyone. She turned 14 in July and didn't even celebrate her birthday with any friends. We took her out to dinner and then had cake at home. That was it. She wanted to invite some girls to go and do paintball, and I was all for it. So the rest of this basically goes on, I won't read it because it's long, but the rest of this basically goes on to say that she never invited anyone, so they didn't do the birthday party, that she has some friends that she will occasionally take places, but there's no one consistent that she's hanging out with. And then when her mom, whoever wrote this, I think it's the mom, had said that she should invite someone over, she'll always say, no, that's weird. It says that she spends most weekends at home. She's involved in some sports, but the friendships are only centered around those activities. And the main part of this is that it saddens the OP, makes them think she doesn't want to have best friends, worried that she's going to miss out on all the great things that high school has to offer because of friendships, and that she knows she's lonely because the daughter has disclosed this to her in the past. So mom is basically asking her what to do, asking advice on it. So here's my question. I would start at a few different root cause places. First thing I'd want to know as a parent, do you have friendships? Do you have close people that you routinely see? Do you have close people you routinely talk to? Do you have people that are routinely in your life as friends, best friends? Does she see that, right? Because it's one thing for us to say we have friends. It's another thing for us to actively role model what having friends is like. Now, I didn't read all of the responses because there's 100 of them, but I would be curious about that question. The second thing I would be curious about is if she has any sort of diagnoses, or if she has any sort of mental health counseling support, etc. I think that for this, there's the role model piece, there's the desire piece, there's her own mental health piece. And I want to touch on the desire piece actually, because I think as parents, as people, as humans, we often think that everyone potentially wants lots of friends around, right? If you must want lots of friends, you must want this. There are some people who would identify as loners and live very happy, healthy, well-balanced lives. They might just have one or two close friends versus 35 friends that are super close and whatever. So I would want to understand for the daughter what her desires for friends are, right? Does she want a bestie like you had when you were younger? Does she want a handful of friends, like a girl group that she can hang out with? Or does she just really want one or two friends to bring to different places, as she grows up? So that those would be a few things. The second thing I would talk about is her own mental health, because I think I would be curious about what barriers, systemic or otherwise, are potentially getting in the way of her being able to make friends. So if I think about, this person had said that their daughter is in 2 different activities, and I would wonder, right, are those activities providing so much structure for her during the week that she doesn't really have extra time to hang out with people or doesn't want to? Some kids are really fried by the end of the school day and they don't want to see anyone. Some kids are really fried when they have 5 hours of after school activities every single day, and they're just done for, right? They don't want that extra social connection. So I would look at her schedule and try to understand for her what the barrier is, because it being weird to me is an invitation to ask deeper questions and to get more curious. And I think the other piece is that I 1,000% feel like any teenager could benefit from therapy and from a supportive counselor, as long as they have a good connection and understand the dynamics at play. Because we don't want a therapist who's just gonna be like, oh, it's totally fine, right? We want a therapist who's gonna like explore this and help her understand herself and what her desires are and what she's looking for. And ultimately, that might be okay. That might be totally fine for her. But that's not where we want to start, right? We want to start with curiosity, exploration, really understanding her with who she is and what she's looking for in a friend group, etc. I do think, too, the other thing that you could look at is there are really awesome like social skills groups for kids and teens that it's like a week-long crash course and like how to make friends and how to transition friendships from this to that. And they can be really helpful in all of those pieces, because the way that kids make friends nowadays is very different from the way that people made friends that are parenting teens, because the world has shifted so drastically. So many kids exist online now almost entirely because they have a lot more freedom. They have a lot more like unsupervised time. They have a lot more, decision making they get to do when someone isn't standing over their shoulder looking at them all the time and they're in their virtual world. So definitely get her a therapist. Definitely take a look at your own social situation. And I would be wondering, like, do you have a lot of friends as a parent? Are you role modeling those pieces? And I think too, like, at the end of the day, like the OP had written that I'm at a loss and ultimately fear for her mental health down the road. And I think that like the fear is real, right? Because there is concern about what that would look like for her in the future. But there are a lot of people, like I said, that live really great, healthy, fulfilling lives. And I think it's about figuring out like what they want to do with their time off and who they feel like they really want to connect with. And keep working at it, right? Like building relationships is a skill building process. It takes time. It's never going to be this like overnight best friend situation, at least not anymore long term. So I hope that helps. That was a good one. I think that because of COVID and because of the way kids connect now, we're seeing this a lot more. And because she is someone that might be more presented or perceived as popular, there might be a lot of kids that are like, oh, I can never ask, so-and-so to hang out with me because they probably have so many friends. When in reality, this kid is like friends with a lot of people, but hasn't taken the step to really solidify that outside. I think you're right to ask questions. You're right to, worry and like consider the other alternatives for support. So great job. I know it's really hard to like navigate all of that, but I hope that helps. Let me just find my next question. The thread is called Respecting Teens' Photo Wishes. Oh, here we go. I love this one. It's really interesting. My teens, 16 and 13, have been asking me not to share some of their photos on social media for a while. That's fine. I respect their wishes. Sometimes my 16-year-old approves, and also sometimes she posts her own pics on social media. So in that case, I claim that is fair game. That's fair. But now my 13-year-old doesn't even want me to text her back to school photo to family members. Forget about posting on social. I feel sad. Is there some happy medium here, or just keep those pics to myself? Oh, that's an interesting end to that. Okay. So I'd be curious, based on this info, maybe why both kids don't want things shared. And I'd also be curious, like, when you're sharing the posts, what content are you sharing them with? I'd want to understand that. And I also would be curious for you, when you said, I feel sad, what that's about. Because I think that my question around, like, I guess the root is, like, do you want to share the pictures because you're so excited because, like, look what I created, look who my kid is, look how, like, proud I am, versus, like, I feel sad maybe because, like, your kiddo feels maybe not confident, or there's, like, a self-esteem issue or something else going on. So I think it is understanding the driving force for this conversation, and then also understanding, like, maybe what her them, their relationship is with those extended family members. Because if they were someone that you like, they didn't really know, it might feel really weird to them to have their picture being sent to like, I don't know, someone that they've only met like once or twice and don't have like consistent interaction with. So I'd be curious about that. So there was an edit on this, which I think is helpful. And the edit says, after a grandparent asked me for her back to school photo, I discussed it further with a 13-year-old. We figured out a solution, which like literally love this for you. Great job parenting and kind of understanding and having that conversation, because collaboration is the name of the game. I let her play around with an airbrush app. She made the slightest change. I can't even see the difference, but it was enough for her to feel good about texting the picture to grandparents. So I love this because I feel like it shows, you know, respect and communication, collaboration, shared decision-making, problem solving, right? There were all these like really great pieces that went into like just this thing. And this feels probably like a small example, you know, day in the life of parenting, you know, a teenager. But this is really incredible support for your kid and really incredible support in her own like self-esteem, her, you know, decision-making, her choices, her own autonomy. I really love this thread. So great job, human. I can't tell who wrote it, but you did a great job. Okay, on to the next one. Let's see. 15-year-old son is having sex. Please help with advice. All right, let's go. I love talking about sex and boundaries with teenagers. We have just found out that our 15-year-old son has started having sex with his 15-year-old girlfriend. We found used condoms in his room, and he has confirmed he's having sex with her. They need to talk to him without feeling like they're attacking him. He confirmed that they were having sex over the phone with them. The OP continues to say, but I take this very seriously, and my husband and I are very concerned about a possible accidental pregnancy. Okay, I have to say, this was posted a couple days ago. I just have to read this first comment because this is like, these comments are so good. So people are saying it's normal and natural to want to have sex. True and fair. It doesn't make you a bad person to be worried about their future. True and fair. You know, I think there is a big concern around teen pregnancy, readiness, etc. You know, validated and affirmed the preventative features being used, which are already using condoms, which is great. That's what we want. And discussing the ramifications potentially, right? The outcomes of having sex in ensuring that like the kids are ready, right? The teenagers would be ready to raise a child or ready to make a decision around that pregnancy, and also doing the preventive pieces to make sure that that doesn't happen before, you know, they would want it to. So generally speaking, this is my thought. I think that typically our responses to teenagers having sex is a reflection of how we generally view and feel about sex. So if you have someone who is really fearful about pregnancy, really fearful about like STIs, really fearful about these pieces, you're operating from a place of fear versus informed information and giving your kid what they need to ensure that like all of these things are covered. So for instance, I think information is like one of the most valuable things. And I know that like some school districts do sex ed, they'll talk about all these pieces. But I think that we also as parents, as providers, need to also make sure that we're providing a narrative too. So one of the narratives I would put out there is like having sex is totally fine and natural, right? And it's natural to want to do it. And let's be grateful in some senses that he's having sex with a girlfriend and not just random hookups that maybe don't have the same like level of like connection, consent, etc. The other thing is that he's using protection, right? So I would want him to have information around like what happens if protection breaks, what happens if you don't have protection, what happens, you know, if there is like a, you know, a potential pregnancy, an accidental pregnancy. Like I would want to have the conversation and walk him through all of that so that he has an understanding of what all that means, right? And this isn't a shaming thing. This is, hey, if you're ready for this, we should have these conversations as well. And I think at the end of the day, like then you have to make decisions in terms of like, do you want them having sex in your house? Do you want them to have the door closed, right? And the thing notoriously is that like, where there's a will, there's a way, right? And that goes for me with like self-harm. It goes with like substance use. It goes with, you know, sex and all those pieces. I always say, in terms of harm reduction, I would rather a kid have sex at a house in a safe space with access to contraception or, preventative measures than have sex in the car in some alley, potentially that's like an unsafe location. So I think like we're talking about the OP's concerned about possible accidental pregnancy. I would want to make sure that this teenager had access to condoms. I would want to make sure this teenager understood the menstrual cycle, all the pieces that go into like creating a baby, you really having the understanding not just of his own biology, but of his girlfriend's biology as well. And that, yes, I get it's an awkward conversation, and that might be something to rein in a mentor figure, a therapist, someone that can really help him understand all the different pieces. And again, not in a shaming way, right? Not in like you have to have these conversations because you're having sex. It's like, hey, we notice that you're ready to do this, and we want to give you the information to make sure you can make good and safe decisions for yourself. And at the end of the day, if you're concerned about a possible pregnancy, an accidental pregnancy, I also would talk to him about like what he would do if that were to happen, what the expectations would be. Like would you expect him to remain involved in that kid's life? Would you expect him, X, Y, and Z, etc. And what would he think about all of that, right? And again, it's not about shame. We don't want to shame this because once we shame something, they will hide it. They will not talk to you. They will do it in dangerous ways. Shame is not the way to work through any of this, right? So it's not shame. It's like, hey, we're recognizing you're getting older. We're recognizing that you're doing this. You confirmed it over the phone. That's fine. We want to make sure you have the resources. How can we help you keep your body safe? How can we help you keep your life going in the direction you want it to, right? The last thing I would talk to him about is like STIs, STDs, all of those other pieces. And I would make sure he knows how to access that at his doctor's office. In a lot of states, you don't have to have parent consent to do any sort of STI testing. But if that is a thing that is in your state, I would want to make sure that the consents are signed with the pediatrician's office just so he can get STI testing. And I would have him talk to his girlfriend about that too, to be like routinely, let's get tested. Relationships change. Trust sometimes changes. And I would also want to talk to him about, relationship and trust and safety and what all those pieces mean to him. And I think this could be a great situation for like a therapist, because I think in general therapists, we should be talking about sex. We should be talking about relationships, attachment patterns, all those pieces. So he could be a great candidate. It could be a great candidate for a family therapist as well to like help navigate some of these discussions if you're feeling uneasy to do so, which again, makes sense. So I really love a lot of the comments that are on this thread. So if you have a kid who's engaging in sex and you're worried about, possible outcomes, I would actually go and read this thread because it's like pretty awesome. And then there were some teen parents that chimed in, nothing wrong with having a pregnancy in teenhood if you have resources and the commitment to do so. Okay, next question. Here we go. Oh, I love this. Okay, this is another one about sex. Don't worry, we'll link all these below too so you can find the threads easily. But this is what it says. It just says teen sex. I need some guidance for how to handle this. My 16-year-old son and his 17-year-old girlfriend, I caught them having sex in my home. They were using a condom and she claims to be on birth control. And I told her to speak with her mom about it because I'm going to call her mom to make sure we're all on the same page. But I'm giving her a chance to tell her mom before I do. I gave her a few days and texted her to see if she talked to her. She's now saying she'll tell her mom tomorrow. My son and her are supposed to hang out tonight around 5, and I don't want to push too hard because my son and her daughter both have a history of running away when things get tough. Should I just go straight to her mom, and should I tell the girlfriend that she has until 5 to tell her mom before I do? I don't necessarily think it's ever a good idea to force a conversation like this because you have no idea the relationship this kid might have with her mom and what that might mean. So what I would do is I would pause the talk about like you have to tell her, and I would just get curious and I would ask like what the hesitation is. I would ask what the relationship is like. I would want to understand a lot more about what all of that looks like before I like force anything like this, especially because you had said earlier in the thread that like they both have a history of running away when things get tough. And that to me seems like there is a relationship rupture potentially on her and her mom's side. And I would worry about like pushing that. And you don't actually know like what, the parent has already talked about with the kid. You don't it doesn't sound like you have that information. So I would want to know all of that before I put my foot down. Okay, I'll read the edits. I've already had talks with my son about this over the years. I'm glad he's using condoms. I actually wasn't going to say anything to her mom, but another friend of ours is pushing me that I need to tell her because she's my friend and she'd likely not appreciate me not telling her, particularly if they get pregnant if she finds out I knew they were doing it. That adds another layer of complexity to this. And I wonder, actually, if you guys have talked about sharing information like that because you are friends and what the previous like historical expectation has been in terms of this in your friendship. Obviously, if they've been dating for a bit, I would have had those conversations straight up just so you're on the same page and not like holding anything back. So the next edit says, thank you all for your insight. I know I tend to be a control freak. I'm a single mom. His dad passed away when he was 5. And I'm going through some health issues. So I guess I'm trying to hold on to the only control I have in my life right now at their expense. I'm going to tell her that I won't talk to her mom and that I'm here if she ever wants help approaching the subject with her mom. Thank you all for helping me think rationally in a stressful situation. OP, I adore this. I'm like so grateful that you were able to like post this, and I know it takes a lot of strength to like ask these questions and to get all the feedback. And I really appreciate that you were able to read it, take it in, and then shift your kind of perspective and understanding in terms of what would be the best for you and your son and this girl. So I applaud you. The understanding, the reflection you had on this was really beautiful. And I really hope that like they both see how willing you are to like help support them. Way to go. I love this. Next one. Okay. Oh, I love this one. These are also fun surprises. This is gonna be a long one. Okay. How to deal with a teen who does not want to chip in around the house. Here's the story. I have an 18-year-old who doesn't want to help wash dishes or maintain a clean kitchen because she says she doesn't eat here. She doesn't help clean the bathroom or maintain it either because she's not cleaning up after anyone else's shitty toilet, meaning when she gets out of the shower, she leaves behind all of her hair in the tub and walls and her clothes that she took off. She doesn't want to help watch her 6-year-old sibling because it's not her kid and she's not a babysitter. She's right, but at the same time, if she's sitting in bed all day, I don't see the harm in her keeping an eye on her sister while I run an errand with her already 1-year-old brother, which I don't even bother asking her about. She rarely cleans her room. It's a mess, and she tells me it's not my problem because it's not my room, and also throws in my face that my room is a disaster, and she's right. It can get pretty crazy because me and her stepfather share the room with her 2 siblings. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment that we have clearly outgrown and are currently looking to buy a house, but no luck thus far. Her only responsibility is taking the dog down, and every single day is a fight. I have the 2 kids, and I'm drowning at home. She runs a little nail business from her room, and that's the only time she tidies up. And by tidy, I mean she throws all her mess into her loft bed and hides it. I have warned her that she will no longer be able to run said business if she continues not keeping her end of the deal, and she says I don't support her and that she's not stopping from seeing clients. She still brings them in. So she's 18, she went away for college for 1 semester and she came back. I enrolled her in community college and she has shown little interest in getting anything done. Man, I have so many thoughts on this. Let me just read the comments quick. The first comment, don't be a doormat, time for her to shape up or ship out. Someone says I have a couple of rules for my kids at that age. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm assuming, okay, mom, you're doing a lot for her, right? And it feels very much like she's not being grateful for all of the things you're doing for her. And I think that this would be a perfect scenario for a family therapist, right? Now, I say this because I think that if you just try to talk to her, you're always going to look like the enemy, and she's going to be like, this is unrealistic. But I think with the help of a family therapist, you can get the points across, and you can also come up with something that feels more like an agreement. So, for instance, at 18, she is a legal adult. At 18, she can go and she can rent her own space. So there are there are so many different ways you can kind of like navigate expectations, but what this entire situation is that she feels like your expectations are unreasonable and they're not being met, and you're continuing to allow her to live like this while not meeting a single expectation. So I'd say if you're gonna meet and talk with a family therapist about this, that you're also going to talk about shifting the expectations, getting her on board, and then also like, what is the boundary going to look like for you, right? I love to support teens. I love to support young adults, but this feels like, one, either she's super depressed and very misguided and needs a lot of mental health support to just understand herself and what's happening right now, or really needs the hard expectations of like, you have 3 months, this is what's going to happen. If at the end of 3 months, if this isn't happening, you're not moving in with us, etc. Because I feel like she is really taking advantage of all of the things. Yeah, everyone is saying like, give her 90 days, you know, reasonable guidelines, etc. But I would say that if you're putting out some sort of agreement, you have to be ready and willing to follow through on your end of that agreement. So if you give her 90 days and she doesn't come through with it, doesn't do it, you have to be willing to pull the trigger on whatever that agreement said. So if her responsibility is taking care of the dog, watching the kid for a couple hours a week, doing this, doing that, dishes, etc., and she doesn't do it, she's gone, right? Like, this is the hard and fast truth of communal living. It's a hard and fast truth of being an adult. And I, at the same time, I really think this could be beneficial for a family therapist, because I worry about the potential impact on your marriage. I worry about the potential impact on the other 2 kids. The fact that the 4 of you are living in one bedroom and she has a room to herself at 18 feels hard. So I would strongly recommend a family therapist that can help you navigate this and really just be constructive around like expectations, shared goals, etc. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, she doesn't necessarily have to agree with any of it, but you have to be able to put the expectations in place and to hold the boundary for whatever that's going to be. The other thing you could do, and actually this is interesting, is that if you decided to if you decided to buy a house and you moved in, that could be a great time to reset the expectations and to really hold the boundary of whatever those expectations are, because it's going to be a transition for everybody. This is a really interesting thread. There's a lot of stuff there, but that's what I would say. I think getting in with a family therapist, I think she probably needs a therapist to kind of help her figure it out, because I feel like she's probably miserable there too, and maybe just doesn't know what to do and doesn't know how to navigate like the adult part of that, and the fact that she can move out if she wants to, and she can have her own space, especially if she's kind of working and doing nails on the side. So, ooh, that's a fun one. Okay, here we go. Kids said they want to move far away. My teen and preteen told me yesterday that they can't wait to move far away from me, presumably. Since they were born, they've been my everything. We're close and I work part-time, so I'm almost always around. I give them their space and we also spend time together. I have to admit it blindsided me. I've been having a hard time with one daughter learning how to drive, and I've told her I hope she still spends time at home. But could I really be pushing them away by sharing my feelings? Will they really move away, or is that just what kids say? I admit it would devastate me, and I'm really searching for anything that will help me deal with this new revelation. So the interesting part about this is teens say a lot of things. And part of it is because I think they're experimenting with how it sounds, and they're experimenting with like what your reaction to that is. The other thing is that there's still a lot of time for them, and they're also trying to experience their own autonomy and independence and figuring out like what life means like for them. And I think you made an assumption basically when you said from me, presumably, right? So I would go back and I would ask you to get curious about why they said that and what they think moving away really means, and what they would want to see for that. So the thing I would want you to know too is that you have 2 kids, you work part-time. Once they are living their own life and they're like in college, they're beyond that, I would expect you to commit to like traveling to see them and to helping them build their home wherever that might be. So it doesn't mean that they're gonna be gone forever from this far, far away city and that you're never gonna be able to visit them. You are not stuck. They go to college, you help them move in. You go to parents' weekend. You attend every single thing you possibly can. You go visit them on weekends, take their friends out. You don't want to like pitch a fit because they're not coming to see you, because they're also starting their own lives. They're like developing their own stuff. So if you want to be a part of that, you need to go and you need to support them wherever they choose to be, whether it's college, grad school, beyond, first job, etc. the more willing you are to travel and go visit them and to help them establish that, the better it's going to be for you in that relationship, because they're not going to feel like asking you to come visit them is this horrible thing because you're frustrated or mad that they didn't come home to see you. Their home is changing, right? Like that's the other thing to think about. Their home is changing when they go to college. Their home is changing beyond college. You are their first home, and we want to support them in every home after the one that they're in with us. But I would go back, I would get curious. I would want to understand that. And I would shift your expectations a little bit around like what it really means once they're older, once they're at college, once they're doing all this stuff, because your life is going to be substantially different too. And if you're working part-time and you have the time to do it, I think the kids are likely expecting some sort of flexibility with you going to visit them, helping them set up wherever they're at, establish whatever. And I do think that like, you know, teenagers are also still trying to express and practice independence and autonomy. And I can very much see that as part of the comment that was made. And I would just like roll with it. I wouldn't put anything into it because I think the more you fight them on it, the more they're going to get that ingrained in their head of like, this is what I want to do. So, and it could be that they don't want to get away from you. They want to get away from the city that they're in, their hometown. Because for instance, when I was like younger, I couldn't wait to get out of my hometown and the people that I'd been surrounded by my entire life up to that point. Could not wait to get out of there. And so I think like, again, go back, get curious, ask them all these questions, figure out where some of that is coming from, and then really have that conversation. And also don't take it personally because they're trying to express independence. But I totally get that it blindsided you. But this is a time to practice some reflection and go back and practice curiousness and just see what they say. You never know. It could be that they really hate the town and that they'd rather you like, you know, come visit them than them coming home. So, okay. I think I have time for one more. So, this is what we're going to do. Inability to take responsibility for actions. Is this normal? Let's see. I have a child who will literally do things in front of my face and then get angry when they have to take responsibility for their actions. And then instead of taking responsibility, they blame everyone under the sun and say they did nothing wrong. It's always someone else's fault or my fault for having the audacity, I love that word, to ask them to take responsibility. I'm fucking tired. Everything in my life revolves around my kids' comfort and well-being. I grew up in a high control religion, which is not how my kids are growing up. If I would have acted like that, I would have been beaten. I'm so sorry, OP. That's rough. That's a lot of stuff. I have a hard time knowing what is and isn't typical teen behavior because nothing was typical in my house. I applaud you for being able to recognize that. I'm so glad you're posting this. Let's read more. I had strict expectations, and if I didn't meet them, I got hit. My kids do not get hit for obvious reasons. Okay, so here's a really interesting thing. This is, I guess, what I'm going to focus on. I think that this falls under the category of don't ask what you know, right? Don't ask things you know. Don't ask for confirmation on things you know. If your kid is getting, and I don't know the age. It doesn't say. It says child, so maybe I'm assuming under 12. But one thing I would say is that kids often test to see how aligned their reality is with situations happening in the world. So this, to me, would be, are you holding them accountable for those things versus asking them to take responsibility, right? Because if you asked most kids between the ages of like, I don't know, 4 and 17 to take responsibility for like drawing on something that shouldn't have been drawn on, or for like breaking something shouldn't have broken, they're never going to take responsibility, right? That is more of an adult feature of being able to recognize they made a bad decision and have some like regret, remorse, feelings of like, I can do better, etc. What we want to do, if you're seeing your kid do this thing right in front of you, and it's a thing that is like not good, not wrong, or not right, whatever, you want to say, like, you're responsible for this. You're responsible for this is different than I need you to take responsibility for this. Because your need in that moment is really like needing them to just be aligned, but you're also not holding them to that standard. So instead of saying like, are you taking responsibility for this? It's like, actually, this is your responsibility, and just end it at that. Oftentimes too, kids have a really hard time accepting responsibility for something because they feel shame and guilt around it. And so that's a conversation I would have next with your kiddo. It's just like, hey, like when you do something and you do something wrong and you know you did something wrong, like what is that, right? Is that shame? Is that guilt? Do they know what those words mean? I would teach a lot of emotional understanding with this, because there is a lot of adults that can't even take responsibility for their own actions. And so I would want to understand what is behind your kiddo, and also like what kind of things we're actually doing. Because I guess like little things, and actually lying is super common in certain age ranges, which is why I'm curious how old your kid actually is. But I would go back to them and I would have that conversation about like, what is it, right? Like, what is it about saying that you did this and you made a mistake? And what do you think I think of you when you make a mistake? Or what do you think other people think of you when you make a mistake? Is this actually a self-worth thing? You know, but I think the accountability piece and responsibility is that's a simple piece of like, you are responsible for this. That's it. Right? That's full statement, full stop. And then have conversations around like, why is it so hard to do this? So, and I applaud you. I know like growing up in a high control religion is not always the best, not great. And I applaud you for trying to do better by your kids and from learning from the things that you went through. I'm happy to chat more with you if you want to connect with me, because I know you're really trying, and I get how exhausting it is. So I'm with you. Let me know if I can help. All right, so that's all we have time for today. I really hope that was helpful. I am going to try to keep responding to more of these because it's just a lot of fun, and I love to kind of chat through and give people different perspectives on things. So let me know what your thoughts are, whether you agree, disagree, or if you have other insights you'd want to share with any of these people, posting for help. So anyway, catch y'all later. Hope that helps. I'll see you next time.